Hello, everyone. My name is Donna Weber. I'm excited to share with you my experience, strength, and hope around customer onboarding and enablement. I'm really passionate about it, and I'm passionate about helping companies build scalable frameworks that decrease time to first value and increase the customer total lifetime value. So we have a revolving door here. Do you find that just when you finally onboard a new account, they go live, and then that internal champion leaves and poaches half their team? Has that ever happened to you? So now your CSMs need to onboard a new set of users in that existing account, all while all the new accounts coming on. So they're overwhelmed. And as long as users keep changing and your product keeps updating, you need to have an ongoing onboarding program to address this and to make sure that your customers keep getting value from you. All right, so we're going to talk about what is onboarding and the difference between onboarding accounts versus users, and then dive into ongoing onboarding and next steps. And I'm also excited to share some of the results. I launched a survey about customer onboarding, and I'm going to share some of those results that I received for the first time today, so I'm excited to share that. Okay, so what is onboarding? So onboarding is the action or process of familiarizing new customers with your products and services. So do you have an onboarding program? All right, great. I'm curious how many of you have CSMs do onboarding, or do you have a onboarding team? So raise your hand if you have the CSMs do onboarding, and then raise your hand if you have an onboarding team. All right, yeah, that's becoming more popular, I see. All right, so in my survey, the majority of companies surveyed said yes, they do have an onboarding program just like yourself. And that CSMs mostly deliver the onboarding, and that's what I found. I surveyed 156 companies. Now, I use the word orchestrated onboarding. Orchestrated is organizing and planning something that is complicated to achieve a desired or maximum effect. And I believe Linda yesterday was talking about a symphony, and other presenters have talked about orchestrating. So I'm a big fan of that. And Carrie today talked about the seamless customer journey, moving from touch points to journeys. I'm a big fan of that as well. So orchestrating means that you're not just throwing onboarding at your customers, but that your internal teams are working together to provide a cohesive and a harmonious experience for your customers. So I have the orchestrated onboarding framework, which is 6 steps that I use when I help companies with their customer onboarding and enablement, with the pre-sales, the handoffs, the kickoffs, implementations, reviews, and then the ongoing. And we'll dive into that throughout the presentation. So let's talk about onboarding accounts versus onboarding users. So when you onboard an account, so you have a new account, a new logo, it's usually related to a logo, and it usually has one-off events like customizations, branding, you're going to be implementing, integrating, and you're going to have a go live where you really launch the product. But when you have that go live, that's when the user onboarding often just begins. And for my orchestrated onboarding framework, that's where really the first half is about onboarding the account. And then the next section is where you're implementing the product, but starting to look at onboarding users as well. So let's explore what it means to onboard users, because a lot of times companies get really focused on onboarding the account and miss the opportunity to onboard the users. All right. And Mark Rawls, who was recently with Vista Equity, he's recently just left, but at Pulse, he shared that when customers adopt quickly, they renew forever. So that means when the users adopt your product and they're really using it to have an impact, then they will renew forever. So I think that's an awesome quote. But let's talk about that user onboarding. There's a LinkedIn article that declares that 13% user turnover every year. So if you have 100 users in your account, they might be business analysts, they might be developers, they might be administrators, but if 13% of them leave, that's 13 users leaving just from folks leaving the company. But and that leaves you in that lather, rinse, repeat cycle of new user onboarding. But when you add in internal changes, like how many reorgs are there, people getting pulled to other things, then it starts moving to about 25 or more users, and then you're in the pulling the hair out phase. Anyone feel that pain? So you're on a roller coaster here. So raise your hand if you experience massive turnover with your users. Okay? And it really depends on the industry you're in. You might have one user, like an administrator, you might have thousands of users. So now let's look at ongoing onboarding. So, there we go. There's 5 components for ongoing onboarding. The first is the new users and existing accounts. That's what we're just talking about, and we'll dive into that a little more. Then we have the existing product updates. All right, do you have product updates? And those are getting faster and faster, more and more frequent. You have new products. You might have new organizations within existing accounts, and then you have phases of customer maturity. And so now we're looking at this last phase of the onboarding framework. Okay, so let's look at new users in existing accounts. So when you have CSMs, so raise your hand, do CSMs do the training? Okay, that's pretty common that CSMs are doing user training. And when CSMs are single-handedly training users in the accounts and you have this massive turnover, then you're in trouble. There's no way that you can manage that. So we need to find scalable ways to onboard new users into existing accounts. So, Jennifer talked earlier about learning pathways, customer education, learning management system. I really like to leverage those scalable, repeatable, consistent offerings that we can take from the customer education world. So you can provide all different ways to onboard new users in existing accounts. You might have some self-paced offerings through a learning management system. You might have in-app guidance, like from AppQs and Pendo. You might have some live online sessions, so that where users can come to live sessions and learn how to use your product. And you might have webinars. So those are all ways that you can train new users how to use your product. Because if you're stuck in that initial onboarding, onboarding is not one and done. If you're stuck in that, it's like being in the perpetual license model. We've onboarded, we're done. But in the subscription economy, you need to keep addressing the ongoing needs. And there's a need to move from high-touch training, knowing when that's important, to the scalable, lower or tech touch approaches so that you can really onboard all those users appropriately. All right, so let's look at some more data from my survey. So we have 61% do formally onboard new users in existing accounts. And then for this question, folks could select as many as they wanted. So they said they learned through the CSMs, still mostly through CSMs, the consultants, videos, and instructor-led training. I have a big concern when everyone's learning through CSMs, because how are CSMs going to be strategic and trusted advisors when they're busy training users how to use the product over and over and over? And they're stuck in these basic repeatable tasks. And then, we talk a lot about customer churn, but when CSMs are doing basic repeatable tasks and are not able to be strategic, then we need to worry about employee churn as well. Okay, so who creates the customer training or enablement content? So why don't, we'll go through this and I'll see here in the room. So again, CSMs are the majority, 31%, customer education, 26%. So for you, who's creating the content? CSMs? And then customer education? All right, and then other? All right, so most are customer education. And then part of the orchestration, the orchestrated onboarding, is that customer education and customer success are working together. They're not in silos. They're not building separate content, that they're really working together to provide that seamless experience for the users. All right, next, existing product updates. So how often does your product get new features? You want to raise your hand and shout out how often a new release comes? So monthly? Monthly? Daily? One other? I couldn't hear. Every other month. So pretty darn frequently. You can't create like all new content every single time, but as every time your product updates, your users need to know what's going on. So there's some things I recommend around that. When you have these really frequent updates, I recommend webinars. They're a quick and easy way to get that Delta information out there. You can record them and have them available on the website so anyone can access them. That's a great way to update. And then you could update your content, whether it's training content or help and stuff, have that updated on a more of a major release, so not every single minor release. So Delta courses, so rather than recreating all the courses, you could have some very modularized Delta courses. You can have in-app guidance. How many of you have in-app guidance? All right, so that's great if it's more of a business user type user. Like I've worked with companies where you're coding in the product, so in-app doesn't work there. But in-app guidance, that's great, so you can just onboard users, existing users, to the new features very quickly and easily. And it's always important that you're talking about how it's going to benefit them. People don't really care about your product. They really want to do their job faster, more easily. They want to make more money. They want to save money. They want to save time. So thinking about the jobs to be done, and Jim, who's speaking after me, is going to be diving into jobs to be done. We'll talk a little more about that. Okay, and then email campaigns. How many of you have a customer marketing team or focus? That's great. So really driving that information, again, to the benefit of the users. I'm a user of Smartsheet. Anyone else here use Smartsheet? So it's a project management tool, and I'm always really impressed. They send out webinars. They're 30 minutes long. It's always like, hey, do you want to save time? Do you want to do this? I'm always interested in their webinars. They're short. They're to the point. They're what's in it for me. All right. Next is the new products. So you might have one main product, which you're just updating, or you might be adding new products. You might have a platform. You might have a suite. And if you're rolling out a new product, you really need to help your users know where it fits in to your platform. You need to guide them in the journey from one product to another. And so again, the what's in it for me, making sure they know how it's going to make their lives better. You might train them through courses, through email campaigns, and in-app guidance. Those are similar to the new features. And as Jennifer was saying, I'm a big fan of learning pathways. So a lot of companies just throw a lot of content out there. And as Jennifer was saying about the community, if you build it, they won't come. I say that about content, enablement content. Just because you have content out there, they won't come. So on Friday, I'm talking about at another conference about the content jungle, because so many people are creating content that users have to hack their way to find out what they need. So we need to be prescriptive. That's a part of the orchestrated onboarding, that we're being prescriptive for our customers and guiding them to their outcomes, and not just hoping that they figure out what they need when they need it. A lot of companies I talk to, a lot of the customers of companies that I work with, tell me they didn't even know there was an LMS. They didn't even know that there was this content out there. So just because you have it, people may not come. And work with the product and marketing teams to build this content. So it may be that for dot releases, the product marketing team does this Delta stuff. You need to divide and conquer. I see so many companies where everyone's duplicating efforts, everyone's doing similar things. You don't need to do that. Curate. And if you want to talk to me more about that curating, just let me know, because I'm passionate about that. All right. Then you might be rolling out your product to new organizations within existing accounts. So do you have a land and expand approach at your company? No? Not? Okay, some. So therefore, if you have land and expand, you might start with one small team or organization, and then you're going to be growing across the organization. So there's some considerations there. Like, is this a brand new implementation with separate integrations, branding, customizations? If so, then you're going to onboard them as if they're a new account, a new logo. If they're adding new users to an existing implementation, then it's really adding new users, and you need to look at how you're going to address that. And really understanding what the requirements are for this organization. All right, then we want to look at the maturity model, as other presenters have shared. So I'm a big fan of not dumping everything on customers all at once. So the phased approach, and we've talked about that through the design cycle. Carrie talked about that earlier, design thinking, and that includes being agile and iterative and prototyping. So that's a way that you can, in a phased approach, roll out your product, your modules, your use cases across to your users so that they learn what they need. I talk about getting to first value, some basic use cases, and then building out more complex. So, you define that maturity life cycle, start with something basic, have help them get to some ahas and wins, and then moving to more complex modules and workflows, and then also measure the impact. And so raise your hand if you have a customer maturity model defined at your company. All right, I highly recommend you do that because there's a lot of hope going on. Okay, we hope customers figure it out, but you need to know what kind of customer behavior you want to drive. So what is the behavior you want to see? And then defining pathways that are going to get your users to those more complex scenarios. So the point is to have a plan and then onboard the parts of the product when users need them as if they're new products. Okay, so some more feedback from the survey. Do you charge for customer onboarding? So 69% say no. So how many of you charge for customer onboarding? All right. So I'm seeing more companies charging like an implementation fee, a one-off implementation fee. But how are you going to create these programs to not just onboard new accounts, but to provide this ongoing onboarding for new users, new changes in your product, new products, and moving customers along the maturity model? I'm a big fan of charging, just as Jennifer was sharing earlier, not necessarily to become a high margin P&L, but to be able to invest in your programs and provide real value for your customers. If you don't charge, then you risk not being able to provide those resources. Okay, so these are some next steps for you to consider. So this is a question. So I'm a big fan of the design thinking framework. Whenever I work with a company, I always interview internal teams and their customers to find out what's working for them and what's not. Empathy. And so one question I like to finish my interview with is, if you had a magic wand, what is one thing you would change today? It's very insightful to hear people's responses. So take a moment, you got some paper in front of you or on your computer or phone. What is one thing, if you had a magic wand, what is one thing you would change today to improve your ongoing onboarding? Does anyone want to share? All right. Well, think about how you might implement that when you get back to the office. So on my survey, these were some of the responses I got. A lot of requests for scalable training. If I had a magic wand, some seamless and reliable processes, self-service, a lot of self-service, and then the technology to do that self-service, and the learning management systems as well, the right metrics to know what's working and what's not, and then that improved communication. We've heard a lot about improved communication this week. So I think we're approaching a full moon this weekend. They're going to have the chairlift go up for a full moon ride. But just like the moon is always changing, it's never staying the same, and it's always changing, new phases of the moon. In the same way, your onboarding program needs to always be addressing the changes that are happening with your customers and with your products. And so it's your job to guide customers along that ongoing journey. So here's the 6 ways that you need to address the ongoing onboarding. And take a moment to write down, is there one area you can start addressing? You're not going to tackle it all today, but is there one thing you can start looking at? Oh yeah, there's a way we can scale those new users. Or, there's some ways we can work with product teams and marketing teams to better get users onboarded to new features and new products. Or we can start, hacking out a maturity model in a very agile and iterative way. I like to use the words cheap and cheerful, like a Target approach. All right. So that's what I have today. So I'd love to stay connected. I'm going to need to leave before the end, so can't chat. But please connect on LinkedIn or send me an email. I'd love to talk further. And we have a few minutes for questions if you'd like. Oh, thank you.
All right, any questions? If not, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And thank you very much,
one?
Donna.
We have one?
We have a question in the back. Aaron.
Wait, say that again? Well, well, let me ask you, how many of you are calculating time to value? Yeah, okay, just a handful. I find most companies are not calculating time to value. I'm a big fan of defining some first value and driving customers to it very quickly in a prescriptive manner, ideally within the first 30 days. If they get some win, it doesn't mean your product's all completely implemented and everything's integrated and it's all working perfectly, but they can get some insight, some aha, some deliverable, something to celebrate with their internal teams to go, oh, phew, thank God we bought that product and not the other one. Then, so defining a really basic first value to drive customers to, ideally in the first 30, 60 days. Well, if we go back to the onboarding framework, it's before the deal closes. Yeah, generally just before the deal closes, start some internal handoffs and get the post-sales team engaged and ready to go, jump in running as soon as the deal closes. Any other questions?
All right.
All right. Well,
Thank you very
so
much, Donna.